What's up, everyone? November 2nd edition of the Fantasy Fanatics MMA podcast. I am James Lynch. He is JHK, a.k.a. the Road Warrior. JHK, how are you doing, man? How's everything going over there in Phuket?
It's going good, man. Going good. It's been raining, but other than that, it's been I've been working hard, man. Trying to get a bunch of content. All of that's coming in the next couple of months or so. So
yeah,
nothing
I'm
I can
excited.
really say.
No, for sure. Keep it top secret. That's a teaser. That's what we call it in this industry. So going to be a lot of cool content coming out. What is this show? Are you watching this for the first time? Maybe you are. Okay. Well, this show is a podcast we do where we break down an upcoming notable fight. And on today's edition, as you can see from the graphic, we're going to be previewing the Dominick Cruz and Pedro Munhoz fight coming up here on December 11th, UFC 269. So we'll get right into that. Couple housekeeping notes. So make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. That's what we're going to be referencing here today. I already got my picks in, so we're good to go. Stay tuned to the end of the show. We're going to be giving our underdog picks for UFC 268. Again, this is November 2nd. That's when we're previewing this card. And if you have any questions, I already see some coming in. Just post them in the chat. We'll get to them as soon as we can, as soon as we're done the breakdown of Dominick Cruz and Pedro Munhoz. And you got to subscribe to the channel in order to submit questions. So it takes 2 seconds. Hit that subscribe button. Then you can get your questions answered. And we got lots of time for that after the breakdown. Okay, let's get to this fight. I got the page up on the All-Star. Shout out to the All-Star. Great site. And we've got it right here. Oh, my computer's looking a little weird, but there we go. Pedro Munhoz, Dominick Cruz, going to be taking place UFC 269, December 11th. And yeah, really awesome fight here. How did we get here? Well, we got here because Pedro Munhoz decided not to go to flyweight. Dominick Cruz won his last fight, and we're here because Dominick Cruz obviously still wants to continue his career. There's been some questions as to who he wants to fight, when he wants to fight, all these things. But I think what it comes down to is I think he wants a crack at that title again, and you got to fight guys like Pedro Munhoz to do that. Maybe not the most sexiest matchup, but it's still a cool fight in this division. Your thoughts on how we came to this fight? Because I think it's a great matchup.
It is a great matchup, but I expected Cruz to fight somebody else. Maybe, I don't want to say an easier fight, but a fight that could catapult him a little, without much resistance, right? And I feel like Munhoz is going to pose a lot of resistance in this fight, but I like the matchup. It's a fun matchup. It's gonna gauge like how good Cruz actually is, I think, because he hasn't. Who did he fight last? He fought what?
Casey Kenny.
Casey Kenny, and Casey Kenny is a great fighter, but he's not a top 10 fighter. So we're gonna see if Cruz can hang with the top 10. That's why I like the matchup, but I did expect him to fight somebody else.
Yeah, and I spoke to Pedro right when this fight was announced, actually before it was official. We'd heard the rumblings about it, so I hit up Pedro right away. I said, hey, you want to do an interview? He's like, look, the fight's not signed yet, but, just so you know. And I said, okay, well, let's do the interview, and then once it's good to go, then we'll post it. That way no one gets in any trouble. And Cruz actually went on Ariel's show and, announced it there. So I was like, okay, I think we're good. He goes on Ariel's show and says the fight's happening. So, yeah, I was able to post that right away. But, yeah, one of the things he mentioned to me was that his plan was to go to the PI and double-check about him going down to flyweight. Of course, we heard of this after the last fight, Pedro Munhoz I'm talking about. So instead he finds out he's fighting Dominick Cruz and he's like, okay, I'm good. I'm going to stay up here and we'll see what happens, because obviously a great opportunity here. And I'll be honest, I'm a little surprised that Cruz took this fight, only because of the fact that with a guy like Cruz, who's been a former champ, who's got a bit of leverage, you can be a bit choosy in your opponents. And as great as Munhoz is, doesn't really carry the name value that some of the other opponents do in that division. So that, and I give him credit here, because, some fighters could have played that card and said, no, I want to fight someone more notable. And I want to, pick and choose. And here he is fighting another sort of non-notable opponent. He fought Kenny. Now he's fighting Munhoz. Munhoz a bit more popular than Kenny, obviously, with, some of the wins that he's had. But yeah, I think I just wanted to give Cruz credit for taking this fight. And again, it's a pair of fighters that, in Cruz's case, it's about sort of getting back to that spot he was at, being champion. And for Munhoz, he's had a bunch of setbacks, right? Lost his last fight, and we'll get into that in a sec, but it's a good opportunity for him to add a UFC legend on his resume. It's crazy to think who he's fought in the last couple of fights. Is it Edgar, Aldo, and now Cruz? To be able to have that on your resume just looks outstanding. But we'll get into Munhoz in a second here. But let's look at the tail of the tape as we're staring at it right now here. Not a huge age gap. We kind of forget about that because Dominick Cruz is, has been fighting forever. But Cruz is only a year older than Pedro Munhoz, so not a huge difference in the age. The fights are identical. Part of that is the fact that Cruz has been injured for so long, so he hasn't racked up as many fights. 19 wins for Pedro Munhoz, 23 for Dominick Cruz, 6 losses, 3 losses for Cruz. 4 wins by knockout, 7 by Cruz, 9 wins by submission, just 1 for Dominick Cruz. Finish rate of 69%. So it's actually interesting that Munhoz has more of a finishing rate, but you look at some of Cruz's fights, and we'll analyze that in a second here. A lot of those are decisions. And then height-wise, Cruz a little bit taller, a little bit of a reach advantage, but not by much. Munhoz was used to that in the last fight with Jose Aldo. Let's get to Jose Aldo's last couple fights here. Or sorry, Jose Aldo, Pedro Munhoz. What am I talking about here? Let's get that on the screen. Should have had this ready to go beforehand. But yeah, we'll start with Munhoz, and then I'll get your thoughts on him as well. So as you can see here, lost to Aldo, beat Rivera, lost to Edgar. I thought he beat Edgar. Go look at MMA decisions. A lot of other people felt the same way. So realistically, he could be 2-2 in his last 4 as opposed to 1-3. Lost to Sterling. I was at that fight. Really great matchup there. That's a fight that I think people sort of forget about. That was like a fight of the night, like sort of all-out brawl between those two. And then, of course, the big win over Cody Garbrandt prior to that. So Munhoz has been one of those guys that's been hovering around being a contender. He just can't seem to get over the hump. And certainly a win over a former UFC champion like Dominick Cruz would put him back in that driver's seat. One other win I got to point out, Rob Font, still the only guy to finish Rob Font in the UFC. I know Rob's a much more improved fighter since then, but that looks good on the resume. And I think we forget that Munhoz made his UFC debut in February of 2014. So it's been quite the journey here for the young Punisher. Your thoughts on Pedro Munhoz, and then we'll get on to Dominick Cruz.
Man, it's Pedro Munhoz. Like you just said, once he gets to that certain level, it just seems like he can't get over that hump. And I'm wondering if he will ever get over that hump. You know what I mean? Because in the last fight against Jose Aldo, I felt like he could have mixed it up more and probably would have got the win against Aldo, but he just didn't. He kind of played Aldo's game. The Frankie Edgar fight was a split decision. A lot of people thought he won that fight. So, here or there. The Aljamain fight, it definitely lost that one. So 3 guys, 2 legends and the current champion he's lost to. So it's hard to be too harsh on Pedro Munhoz, but is he ever going to get over that hump? That's the big question. And Dominick Cruz, I feel like, would be the perfect opponent to see if he can, because Dominick Cruz, probably the top 2 best bantamweight of all time. If you take TJ out of the equation, right? Do you believe so? Oh,
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a huge opportunity for Pedro Munhoz to bounce back, after losing to Aldo. And his resume, man, we discussed it like a few months back. It seems like he's fighting really, his turnaround is pretty fast, right? Because if you look at, most other fighters in UFC right now at that level in the top 10 or so, they're not fighting like 4 months after
it'll be his third fight this year. I think we forget about that. The Rivera fight was back in February. So that's pretty awesome. Just the one fight last year, but I mean, we were in a pandemic and, there's a bunch of stuff going on. I think they kept rebooking the Edgar fight. But you're right. I think we forget third fight for Munhoz. That's a huge advantage in my opinion. Even though he's coming off a loss, that's still to get that cage time is really great. So,
side note: Jimmy Rivera signs with bare knuckle. Did you see that? Is that fake
no? I
news?
Didn't. I don't. Let me double check. Well, we might as well do a quick little check here.
Yeah,
we'll put it on the screen here.
I thought I saw that he signed with bare knuckle boxing or bare knuckle fighting championship.
Yeah, maybe he is. Wrong. Yeah, according to MMA Junkie. Man.
When did he get released from the UFC? Like, it seems like these guys are being I guess they're fighting out their contracts and then, looking at what's out there without us even knowing. And that's our job to know these things, right? And how come, Mike Perry getting signed? I didn't even.
Well, you know what I just realized too is kind of a side note. We can talk about this more in the Q&A portion, but I didn't realize Jimmy Rivera is now with first round. All those first-round fighters are in bare knuckle. Paige Van Zandt, Mike Perry. It seems like there's more. Pearl Gonzalez. They're all in bare knuckle. And I don't know if there's a streamline there. It's like, hey, we'll get you paid and whatever. But I don't know. Probably there probably is good money. And I guess fighting's not something that a lot of people make a lot of money in. So maybe go for the money right now. But we'll see. But anyways, that's an interesting side note there as well. Yeah. Shall we get on to Dominick Cruz, or was there anything else you wanted to mention about Munhoz?
No, I think Dominick Cruz, there's more to discuss about him because I don't think we've broken down a fight of his recently.
Ever. On this show, I don't think since we started doing it. So it's been a while.
Definitely.
By the way, interviewed Pedro Munhoz. You can find that on the Low Kick MMA YouTube channel if you guys want some insight into that as well. Going to try and get Dominick Cruz. I've got him before. We'll see if I can get him again, but we'll see. Again, the thing with Dominick Cruz you got to look at is just the lack of activity. Injuries have been plaguing this guy's career. I mean, who knows how good he would have been, even better than what he's already accomplished had he stayed healthy here. But you look at it here. Let's go back to 2011. beat Demetrius Johnson. Then he didn't fight till 2014. Then he didn't fight till 2016. Then he didn't fight till 2020. And I mean, in fact, this is probably the shortest turnaround he's had in the last couple of years. So really impressive there for Cruz. But you look at some of those wins, Dillashaw, that was a fight I feel like Dillashaw won, but still the fact that he has that on his resume looks great. Demetrius Johnson, back when Johnson was, I mean, granted at a higher weight class, but still that was very good. The wins over Faber when Faber was in his prime. Lost to Cejudo, but that was after, a huge layoff coming back. Lost to Garbrandt. That was still just a weird fight when you look at what Garbrandt's done since then. And then the Casey Kenny was a split, but I mean, clearly he won. But, it's funny because I interviewed Cruz right after that Casey Kenny fight. His face was beat up. Like he has a black eye. In fact, I would post clips on my channel and people would be like, what happened to Cruz? Did he just get into a fight? And I was like, yeah, this was right after the Casey Kenny fight. So he did get the win, but, and like you mentioned, that Casey Kenny win, not exactly aging too well with him losing the next fight after that. So we'll see what type of Dominick Cruz we get. Again, he's only a year older than Pedro Munhoz, but you look at the amount of injuries he's had, that's got to make him a lot older in terms of the overall grand fight years and all that as well. So Cruz is a tactician. He's a guy that will figure you out and frustrate you. We saw that in the Dillashaw fight, back in 2016. He's good about going in and out. I'd say out of, probably maybe Piotr Jan's got a bit of an edge there, but as far as like technical striking, Dominick Cruz is very good there. He's got good wrestling. He's just a really smart guy when it comes to the mental side of fighting as well. So this is a guy who's seen it all. And, I think he has the ability to beat Pedro Munhoz in this fight, but there's not a ton to talk about Cruz here because we just haven't seen him fight that much. I mean, if we talk about some of these past fights, it's like we're, looking way too far back. Like we can just base the last two fights. Cejudo, he lost, but Cejudo's, pretty damn good as far as what he's been able to do in his career. And then Kenny, again, not a great win. So what are we getting with Dominick Cruz? It's a big if going into this fight as far as what Cruz has in this fight. So just your thoughts on Dominick Cruz and what he brings to the table.
Dominick Cruz is a WEC legend, right?
Yeah.
Like probably the best bantamweight of all time from that promotion. And like you said, there's been large gaps throughout his career, and the gaps have been more recent. What was it? 2013, 2012, he missed both years. And then, like you said, 17, 18, 19, and then 20, he returned. I feel like Cruz is part of that older generation of fighter. And then when he returned in 2020 to face Cejudo, he ran into the next generation. Even though Cejudo's not a young guy, he's still, I feel like, part of a newer generation compared to Cruz. And it showed in that fight. And then when he went in against Kenny, a lot of people thought Kenny might have won that fight. It's a split decision. It can go either way, but it just showed you that maybe Dominick Cruz is not the Dominick Cruz that we loved back in 2015, back in 2011 even. He was just so dominant. He was just so unique. Now he's not unique anymore. I really think that Cody Garbrandt, when he fought him, that's when the coaches at Team Alpha Male finally figured him out. And because, Cruz, he doesn't really change anything. You know what I mean? Like his movement is pretty much the same. He just shows it in different patterns. So once you start to figure out those patterns, I feel like that's what the coaching staff did with Cody Garbrandt. And Cody Garbrandt, he followed the game plan perfectly and styled on Dominick Cruz. And then he missed a bunch of years and he came back against Cejudo, and Cejudo finished him. And when's the last time we saw Dominick Cruz get finished? He was one of those guys that would never get finished, and Cejudo went in there a weight class above and defeated him. So I feel like we're seeing kind of like the not the plateau, but kind of like a downward spiral, for Cruz. And it's not because he doesn't have the talent. It's just like the newer generation is just much better than the previous generation.
They figured him out.
Exactly. And there's rare talents that go from generation to generation and dominate, like a John Jones. Dominick Cruz is not one of those guys, even though he's a WEC legend and probably one of the best bantamweights of all time. It's just his track record lately is just not very good compared to, let's say, like a Pedro Munhoz.
Very well said. Two quick things before we get to our picks. The Dominick Cruz and Casey Kenny fight, I went back and looked at the media scorecards. One media member, I'll say his name because it's on here. You can't see it. Shaquille Majuri from Fightful was the only person who scored the fight for Casey Kenny. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 21 media members scoring that fight for Dominick Cruz over Casey Kenny. So I think most people agree that Cruz won that. The Edgar and Munhoz fight, I didn't realize it was this heavily favored because I thought Munhoz won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 media members scoring the fight for Munhoz, just 3 scoring it for Frankie Edgar. So again, you look at the context there, just, because again, you look at the resume sometimes and you're like, okay, that guy lost, but what's really the context of it? So wanted to point that out as well. Okay, let's get to our picks. I think that this is going to be an interesting fight. I mean, the implications for this fight are huge for both guys. Okay, I'm going to put the context out here, right? If Munhoz loses this fight, his days as a contender at bantamweight, I think, are done. He's 35. The chances of him in such a deep division, racking up 2 straight wins and getting back in the driver's seat, I don't see it happening. He's talked about going to flyweight. That's his out. So I think if Munhoz loses this fight, I think you will see him go down to flyweight. If Cruz loses this fight, again, same thing. I think he's done as a contender because, like I said, at 36, how are you going to rack up enough wins to get back in the driver's seat and do what you do? And it's not like Cruz is a finisher either, right? Like, it would be a different scenario if it was, say, like a Johnny Walker or something, right? He loses a fight and he racks off 2 straight knockout wins or something that gets back in the driver's seat. That's a different story. Cruz really isn't like that. He's a decision guy. So that's not really something that's going to lead him to getting like a fast track to a title shot here. With all that said, I got to go Pedro Munhoz by decision here. I think, even though he's coming off the loss to Aldo, I think Aldo was just a little bit better in the striking department there, but Munhoz has still got really good striking. He's got a great ground game. I mentioned the Rob Font submission, right? I mean, you just don't go out there and submit a guy like Rob Font. I realize Font's been improved, but still, for me, what it comes down to is that Munhoz has been a lot more active. He's shown that he's, close to getting to where he needs to get to. And I just think with Cruz that we're basing it off a fight where he got absolutely outclassed by Henry Cejudo and had a very close fight with Casey Kenny. Would Casey Kenny beat Pedro Munhoz right now? If that fight was to happen, who would you pick? I'd pick Pedro Munhoz as far as what we've seen from both fighters here. For that reason, and I know I'm using a little bit of MMA math here, I think Pedro Munhoz gets it done by decision. The other thing is this is only a 3-round fight, right? It's not a main event. It's on UFC 269. So I think that does favor a guy like Munhoz because you could say Cruz with the championship experience. Maybe that works out a little bit better here, but I think Munhoz takes it. As far as, the betting odds, we don't have anything out yet. I would imagine Munhoz is going to be a slight favorite just because of the activity level, but I'm going Pedro Munhoz by decision here. Who are you picking?
You make a good point that this is not a 5-round fight, and Cruz does really well in 5-round fights, man. Sometimes he needs that time to adjust, and once he adjusts, he takes over fights, or he starts winning the fight. With Munhoz, he's been fighting the best of the best, man. So even though he loses, it shows you that he's that level. It's not like he's getting finished by these guys. He's losing decisions, right? Decisions. So when you look at this fight, just looking off resume past like 2 years, you have to go with Pedro Munhoz. You have to, because Pedro Munhoz been much more active. He's been beating guys that are higher up in the rankings. And like I said earlier, Dominick Cruz doesn't seem like he's plateaued. It's just seemed like he's, like his it's just going like downwards. And that's what I see. Like Pedro, I think he has the power to go in there and finish Dominick Cruz. You say decision, I say Pedro Munhoz comes back in a big way in this fight, and this is a big stage, and he goes out there and finishes Dominick Cruz. And I feel like he does it kind of similar to how Cejudo does it. I think it's going to be like a 2nd or 3rd round. It's not going to happen in the 1st round, but I see Pedro Munhoz going in there, making a statement. And this is a great fight for him because he gets to catapult off a big name. And once he catapults off that big name, they're going to give him another big fight. And there's some names out there that he hasn't fought yet. And, there's some good matchups. So let's see what happens. Hey, Corey Sandhagen is floating out there. That could be a big fight after this.
Absolutely. Great point there. Okay, so there we go. Those are our picks. By the way, my bad. I forgot to look at the bout page when we were going on there before, so we didn't need to check out Tapology. Keep all your stuff on the All-Star, people. That's what we're trying to get at. Very nicely laid out here. I like this. I mean, what other website does this, where they have the records and the finishing rate and all this stuff? This is why the All-Star, you got to bookmark it on there as much as you can. Once again, let's get both of us. There we go. Front and center. I know we got some questions. We'll get to them in a second. Another reminder, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. If you want to submit questions, you got to subscribe to the channel and download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app. I already got my picks on there. We will be doing an Underdog Picks before we wrap this show up. Antoine, good morning, boys. Good evening. It's good morning for me. It's good evening for John. I wanted to know, who does the winner of this matchup face, as I feel both fighters are in a weird spot. Well, John mentioned Corey Sandhagen. There's a lot of options at bantamweight right now. I don't think they're going to run into any trouble. I mean, just some other names that are floating out there. I mean, at the time of recording this, we've got Edgar and Chito Vera. Maybe we can finally see the Frankie Edgar and Dominick Cruz fight if Cruz wins. There's like this. Another thing, I got an issue with the rankings. Like, if your next fight is booked in a different weight class, you should be removed from the rankings. Cody Garbrandt should not be ranked number 7. That's taking up a spot for, a lot of, a deserved bantamweight at this point. So, and then there's Marab out there. There's a lot of, there's not going to be a shortage of fun fights here. So I don't think you can go wrong with anyone in that top 10, top 15. So what do you think?
Talking about a guy nobody probably wants to fight right now is Marab, right? Like he's the boogeyman, he's the dark horse. He's the dark horse. And I love to see him fight somebody that's a wrestler too, not a striker, just a wrestler. But if you look at if you just make like hypothetical rankings, like 16 through 25, dude, nothing but killers at bantamweight, right? Guys that could take a spot in that top 15 easily. Just off the top of my head, Jack Shore. No one really talks about him as much, but dude is undefeated.
That's the name that should be in the top 15, 100%. Or who else isn't either? I'm just looking at it now. We're Adrian Yanez. Why is this guy not ranked?
Exactly.
So it's crazy.
There's so many, like those are 2 of the examples, but there's 10 more examples just like them. Yeah. And maybe even guys that have fought longer in the UFC than Jack Shore or Adrian Yanez. So there's no problems with matchups, man. If one of these guys can't find a fight, there's a killer in that 16 to 25 range that will take a fight, on short notice, no problem.
Can't multitask, obviously, because I was just trying to tweet something, but letting people know to tune in. Also want to know your guys' pick for fight of the night on Saturday as UFC New York approaches. Gaethje versus Chandler's up there, but Burgos Quarantillo is a sleeper. Sorry, I messed it up by asking earlier. I think Burgos Quarantillo is on the main card, is it not? So I wouldn't really call it a sleeper if it's getting the main card treatment for UFC 268 this Saturday. But those are 2 big candidates. The question is, are we going to see a finish in either of those fights? So that's the thing. If one of those gets a finish, is that going to be a fight of the night if it ends a bit earlier? I would think Gaethje Chandler is going to be the fight of the night leading candidate, just because of the skill level, the fact that these guys are pretty similar. I believe we broke this fight down a few weeks ago, but it's I would lean that over Burgos and Quarantillo, only because, and I've mentioned this before, and I love the guy, and I don't mean any shade when I say this, but I think Shane Burgos wins that fight fairly handily against Billy Q. My only concern with him is, the fact he's coming under knockout. But if you look at the level of opposition they fought, Burgos fought a lot better guys. Yes, he's lost to some good guys like Barbosa, but I just think Burgos is I think I said this earlier in the week on my preview show. I think Burgos is where Quarantillo will be in a few years. I think Burgos is already there, if that makes sense. So I could see a finish in that one. But yeah, I would say Chandler Gaethje if I was making a bet.
Well, of course, going, piggybacking off the Burgos Quarantillo fight, I feel like Quarantillo is kind of like turning himself into like a featherweight Colby Covington. His style is kind of like that forward pressure in your face, kind of burn you down and then finish you later on. That's the X factor too. Like he actually finishes guys. He doesn't just go in there with decision wins. And that's what makes it so interesting. Can Burgos handle that forward pressure? Is he going to be able to, launch off that power against Billy Q? That's what I'm interested in seeing. I love the matchup. I think that is the fight of the night. Of course, Gaethje and Chandler is the obvious pick, but another one that's a banger right now that no one's talking about is Quinta versus Bobby Green.
Green, yeah.
What? Yeah. That's on the prelims, man. Like, if you look at the prelims, there's some major heat on the prelims, like Jordan Williams versus Ian Gary. Ian Gary, this hyped up Irishman that is coming into the UFC, his debut against Jordan Williams, a guy that has a lot to lose in this fight. I think that's going to be a crazy fight too. I don't think it's going to be that easy for Ian Gary.
Yeah, well, a lot to gain for Jordan Williams. He's supposed to lose. I mean, you lose a fight the way you did the last one. And now you're on the New York card against a guy that's come over from Cage Warriors. Yeah. That can be a dangerous combination. All the pressure's on Ian Gary in that fight. Jordan Williams, yeah, I'm sure there's pressure with him potentially being cut or whatever. But, I mean, he was going to be in that spot regardless. Now he has an opportunity to really gain back some shine if he can do the upset against Ian Gary. So there
your boy Edmond Shahbazi is coming back on this card against.
I know.
I'm in a tough matchup. This
Yeah,
guy is
I
tough.
don't know what the UFC is doing with Edmond Shahbazi, and honestly, it baffles me because they built him up. It's kind of like Macy, right? They built him up, and then now they're just giving him tough fights. Like Imavov, even if he beats him, does that really get him back where he was? Not really, right? I mean, he's a decent guy, and this is a guy who's trained by Fernand Lopez. Like he's good, he's very good, and we'll see if that time at AKA has paid dividends for Shahbazian. But man, I said it on my previous show on Monday. I think Edmond Shahbazian is a big wild card right now because I thought he looked good against Hermanson early on, but it's those second and third rounds that if he doesn't get that quick finish, he tends to get into trouble. Like even go back to the Darren Stewart fight, that was a split decision, John. Like it's not like it was a clear-cut win for him. So I think it's knockout or bust for Edmond Shahbazian, and that's too much of a risk for me. So
yeah, I thought a lot of people. Yeah, that fight, a lot of people thought Darren Stewart won that fight, and now Darren Stewart's. I don't think he's even with the UFC anymore. I'm picking Ivanov in this fight, man.
So am I. I took him as well.
Finished him.
Yeah, and we'll get to Underdog Picks a little bit later. Kevin Nicholson, what is up, my man? One of my favorite Patreons. Followed Cruz and his injuries for a year. It's concerning to me that someone with such fight intelligence suffers all these injuries in training. Don't think any of the major ones occurred in a bout. You're 100% right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on in that gym. You know what's the interesting thing is that, like, does that gym alliance, like, do they have a history of, like, fighters getting injured a lot? I don't think so. Like, I'm trying to think who's there, right? Phil Davis, you know, all the girls, right?
Dwight Grant.
Dwight Grant, like you don't hear of a ton of injuries, and even Grant was sort of a new addition. He was at AKA forever, so I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's Cruz. Maybe that's one area that's not a strong suit of his, is the conditioning side of things or whatever. Maybe getting hurt. I don't know.
Maybe it's the movement. Maybe it's all that bouncing around on the balls of his feet, and it could tweak your ankle, tweak your knee. And I think most of his injuries were with his knee, I believe. So it's hard to say, but we haven't seen anybody like him again. You know what I mean? Like that style and getting those types of injuries. We have not seen that. TJ Dillashaw got injured during the fight off a submission, right? So you can't say he's getting injured during. And TJ Dillashaw is probably one of the guys that you could say similar to Dominick Cruz. Not the same, but similar.
Very similar. Euro, what's up, man? Good to hear from you. Do you think the winner of this fight gets Sandhagen next? Have we seen Corey Sealing? I don't think we have seen Corey Sealing. He's not that old. Like, and like, we haven't had a chance to talk since the fights on Saturday, but the way I looked at that Petr Yan and Sandhagen fight is that Sandhagen absolutely won that fight. There's no question. I want to get that out of the way right away because people got confused when I mentioned this on the post-fight show. But at the same time, Jan was never in a position, I think, to finish Sandhagen. Not that, where he has with other fighters. So what it kind of tells me is that Jan's just a little bit ahead of Sandhagen. Like every round, Jan was getting the better of him, but it wasn't like a fight where you're like, oh, Sandhagen doesn't belong in there. He belonged in there. It was just that he fought a really good guy. He's probably fighting the best bantamweight in the world. I mean, some people feel that way already, but I think I don't know if he fights. I don't know what the UFC is going to do. I have a feeling Corey will get a bit of an easier fight just because he's on technically a 2-fight losing streak. I don't know what that looks like in the top 15 as far as like an easier matchup for him, but I don't know. I think if you're the UFC, you don't give him a Merab because that's just, Merab could win. And then what? You got 3 losses and you built this guy up. Like Sandhagen's become a popular fighter for them. I think you need to give him a bit of a step that like he's not in the division now, but like a Garbrandt type of fight, like someone that, has a bit of name value, like maybe even Munhoz, to be honest. If actually, maybe if Munhoz wins, then that could be an option for him because I do think that's a winnable fight for Sandhagen, but it just depends how everything shakes out. We got a lot of fights coming up here, so we'll see. I suppose it's possible here for Munhoz if he wins this, or Cruz, right? Same thing, because he was actually linked to a fight with Cruz, if you remember, and then they ended up, I forget what happened. There was some issue. But anyways.
I think that would be a shellacking, to be honest with you. If Sandhagen stepped in there with Cruz, I think Sandhagen would handily take him out. I think that Corey Sandhagen, he'll probably end up fighting the winner or loser of Rob Font, Jose Aldo. And I feel like either fight is a main event somewhere. I think Corey Sandhagen is not the best Corey Sandhagen yet. I feel like we'll see that in the next year or two. And he's going to fight Petr Yan again. And I think it's going to be even a crazier fight. You know what I mean? Like Corey is so dynamic. Like he is so different from any other guy in the bantamweight division. And he just met Petr Yan at the wrong date. Petr Yan is a machine, man. Like, do you know Petr Yan doesn't even have a head coach? And he's won titles without a head coach.
No, I didn't know that.
That's insane. He makes his own coaching staff. Like, you're my coach. You're my coach. Did you know he's changed his whole coaching staff for this fight? Like, he didn't have anybody from his last fight against Aljamain in his corner. that he had in this corner. Like it was.
Well, I knew
like,
that because I know the last camp he was at ATT, so that was a bit different. But yeah, for this camp he was back in. Was he in Thailand or where was he?
No, he was in Siberia. He was at
In
home.
Siberia. Okay, gotcha. Okay,
Yeah, so he
there you
just
go. Well,
picked up.
just shows you how good he is.
Yeah, he's very good. Yeah.
By the way, a bit of breaking news on the media front. Your buddy Nick just announced Tom Taylor hired full-time by South China Morning Post. So good for him.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, just announced that. So there we go. Everyone getting into a lot of people going full-time these days. There's a few others, including yourself, which is well deserved. Lucas, how's Dana going to handle all these contenders at lightweight? Several fighters can stake claim to deserve a title shot. It's pretty simple to me, and let me get your thoughts on this. I'm going to simplify this for everyone. If Michael Chandler wins this Saturday at UFC 268, Islam Makhachev's getting the next title shot. If Justin Gaethje wins the next fight, I think Islam's going to fight Beneil Dariush. Is it? Am I missing something here? That's kind of what I think is going to happen.
You're not missing anything because they're trying to fast track Islam.
Yeah.
And they're going to do it on Fight Island. I guarantee that's going to be the location of that fight because they need somebody to, head. They need that head, right? The head was Khabib. That Khabib is gone. So Islam needs to put it on and move forward. And I feel like he's the guy. They're going to fast track him into the title shot, no matter who the winner is, because they're all fresh matchups for him.
Want Cruz to win, but I think Munhoz will kick his leg off. That could happen. I feel more comfortable picking Munhoz in the situation because of the level of activity and the fact that, the guys he's losing to are good. And I thought he beat Edgar. So, we'll leave it at that. What do you think Colby's best chance at victory will be? Hard to see it going different than the first fight. I hope Colby wrestles a bit this Saturday, to be honest, just to switch things up. Because obviously the first time you guys tried striking with each other, Usman got the better of you. He's got to be a little bit more dynamic. I will say something to people that, because pretty much everyone I know is picking Usman. There's a few people picking Covington, but not many. It's going to be interesting. I think there's a possibility of Colby being a lot better than we think he is because of the fact that he's been off for this long. Like he's not, Colby's known for his cardio. He's not a guy who's just sitting on the couch doing nothing. He might have not fought 3 times like Usman did, but he also was, I'm sure in the gym, really working on things, really making things better. So I just want to let people know that as great as Usman's looked, a bit of context help with, I think Colby could be leveling up himself. And then the other thing is, the 2 wins that Usman had were over Masvidal, and I think Colby beats Masvidal no problem. So it's like, I think that's kind of, it's a combination of where, we were seeing one thing, but if you look a little bit closer, you kind of realize, okay, obviously I'm not taking Usman's wins away from him, but it's also Masvidal, and 2, I think Colby is going to look a lot better. So to answer your question, I think if he adds a bit of wrestling in there, it could make things interesting, but I'm expecting Usman to win.
Yeah, I think everybody, that's what they want to see. They want to see Colby initiate the wrestling to see who's better in the wrestling, who's better in the scrambles. And maybe if Colby is better in the scrambles, he'll have a better chance to defeat Usman. But James, you said it, man. Like you don't have to fight to make improvements. Most guys make improvements. They always say it. It's not during the training camp. It's in the off season when you're not getting ready for a fight, where you go try new things, you learn new things. And maybe Colby's learned some new things that we just haven't seen yet. And he's going to shock everybody on Saturday night. I hope so, because I'm kind of like rooting for Colby to win. I don't know.
I think a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot because there's a lot of people who hate Colby, but I want to see it just to screw up the entire division. Like it's going to, media's going to lose their mind. The division's going to be like, what the heck do we do? Like, does Usman get the trilogy? Does Chimaev jump into the spot? Like, what's going to happen? Like, we really have no idea. So I think for the parity, because we're almost getting to that point with Usman, believe it or not. I know it hasn't been that long, but we're almost getting to the point with him where it's like he's starting to run out of guys to fight. Like, I think you've got Luque as a fresh match. I guess they could do the Burns rematch at some point. Chimaev's out there, but outside of that, like there's no one else I think really like staking that claim. Maybe a Sean Brady if he beats, Chiesa, like down the line, he's still a few fights away. But other than that, there isn't a ton of guys that Usman, I guess. Oh, yeah, and Leon Edwards is the other name I always forget, but it's just because he's kind of been put on the back burner here with this Masvidal fight. But anyways, yeah, that answers your question. Any chance Keith Peterson refs this fight with Cruz? That's one sort of surprising thing. Cruz has been pretty, like you said, an intelligent guy, but his comments with Keith Peterson in the Henry Cejudo fight were kind of like, what? Like, I don't know, because you asked other fighters. I think I did ask a couple other fighters on the card that night. They're like, no, we didn't smell cigarettes or whatever it was he was claiming. So I don't know if that's a personal thing against the referee. I'm not sure, but that was a bit like Marvin Vettori, Paulo Costa type talk. That's like, okay, come on, man. Like, you lost. The referee didn't have anything to do with that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Keith Pearson is a good referee, man. He's a good one. He's one of the good ones. Let's just say that.
I think Cruz Henry was an early stoppage. I disagree. I didn't think it was early stoppage.
But I could see why somebody would think that way. I could see, but I don't believe it was an early stoppage. I think it was a great stoppage.
Yeah. What's up with the wacky event times in the past few weeks? Do you think that might become the new norm? I hope they do. I mean, for my sake, I kind of like, what was it? Not last week before, when they had like kind of the mid-afternoon card, at least Pacific time. That was good. I like that because you can still enjoy your Saturday night, which is fine. The last week's card was a bit early, if I'm being honest. Like, it was at 7:30 Pacific time, which is like, I mean, I'm up early as a dad anyways, but I still got to get my kids ready and all that. So I'd like something a tiny bit later than that. But I mean, at the same time, like I said, I got to enjoy, I got to watch some hockey on Saturday night, so I'm not having to, be stuck to it. But yeah, this week the card will be on regular time, which is all good. So I was fine with that.
Wacky, if it's wacky for you, because everybody's watching the fights at a different time around the world, right? So I guess it all depends on what's wacky for your place, your area. I don't know. What's a wacky time for you to watch a fight? Probably like 3 a.m., right?
Yeah.
Which is
I think it's talking for the international people. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's what the UK has to go through every week. And I would just watch it in the morning and you watch it at night, right? So I love the time, actually. But yeah, the last weeks in Abu Dhabi, I think Abu Dhabi is just a different situation.
Different animal. Thoughts on Dana saying we'll try to make Nate versus Hamzat. So I did see this. There's not a chance in hell Nate Diaz wins that fight. Like, I would give it like 2% if somehow he lands a punch or something. But he's always struggled with wrestlers, and now he's got a guy who's even better when it comes to the grappling. He took Li Jingliang down with ease there. If they are doing that fight, that says to me they know they can't re-sign Nate Diaz, and they just want to get him out of there, and they're going to get one little payday out of Chimaev. But I mean, look, it doesn't make sense. Like, Chimaev should fight. I mentioned this on Saturday, and I don't think I've gotten your thoughts on this. The fight to make with Hamzat Chimaev is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Absolutely. People want Gilbert Burns. The problem with the Burns fight is if he wins, then what happens? He's got to fight Usman again. We just saw that fight this year. Doesn't make sense to give Burns the rematch right away. He would absolutely deserve it. You could make a case for Luque, I suppose, because that's at least a fresh matchup there. Maybe give Edwards the next title shot of Saturday's winner. But I think with Wonderboy, it makes a lot of sense for a variety of reasons. Number one, that Burns fight showed he's not a contender anymore, in my opinion. No offense, Wonderboy, but that's how I feel. He's close to his 40s now. He's 38, I think. So what are you really getting at him at this point? Like, I think the chances of him fighting for a title again are pretty slim. And to me, he's a more notable name than Burns and Luque anyway. So with all that said, and the fact he's a striker and he's struggled with grapplers, at least in the last fight he did with Burns, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's a low-risk fight for Chimaev. It's a bigger name, and it's another chance for him to take out a really notable guy in his resume. Like Li Jingliang, no offense to him, but he's not really a household name. Wonderboy Thompson is. He's fought for the title twice. I think that's the fight to make for Hamzat Chimaev. But Wonderboy announcing on his podcast last night he has a fight booked, and I don't think it's Chimaev if he just fought. To me, it says that if I had to take a guess, I'm guessing it might be Bilal Muhammad. I think he's the only guy who doesn't have a fight booked right now. Neil Magny was doing an interview. Yeah, or Neil Magny, but I saw Neil did an interview with Mike Bond. I don't think he'd do one if he had a fight book. So I don't know. We'll find out. I'm supposed to interview Wonderboy literally after this, so hopefully I can squeeze something out of him. We'll see what happens, but there we go. So yeah, my thoughts are they're trying to get rid of Nate Diaz if they are trying to book that fight.
Well, yeah, they're trying to get rid of Nate Diaz, and they're trying to use Nate Diaz to catapult one of their guys that they want to be in a position to win the title. If you're trying to fast track him, James, you make a good point. Stephen Thompson is a great matchup. Gilbert Burns is a great matchup. Gilbert Burns actually better because he's ranked number 2. Vicente Luque, another one. But I would like to see him fight Bagby. I really don't want him to be fast tracked. I want him to win. Let's say he beats Magny, then he gets a guy in the top 5, right? And then he goes for the title. I feel like that experience is going to be much more beneficial for Chimaev. And I'm a believer now of Chimaev. Like, after that last performance where he just completely mauled Lee, it's just, man, how do you not believe in him now, right? Like,
of course.
I'm not saying you should root for him. I'm just saying you should believe that this dude is extremely talented and he will maul you. Like, that's what he's been doing. What was the strike differential in his first 4 fights? 200 to like 3 or 2 or something. Like, who does that?
Yeah. Kind of on the next question, were you surprised by Hamza's performance? Not really. I think, again, he was a huge betting favorite going into this fight. Like people saying, oh, people again are underestimating Chimaev like they were with Khabib. No, they weren't. If it was a 50-50 fight on the betting line, if people are putting money on Li Jingliang, then we're in agreement here. But the betting, I always look at the betting lines because that's an indication of where the public's feeling in terms of the fight. They bet him up like he was even bigger of a favorite closer to fight time. So he got the respect he deserved, and he showed it on Saturday. And can't we just all enjoy that instead of nitpicking at who didn't, because you didn't come out and say, oh, he's going to destroy him in the first round, that means you hate him. Like, come on, people. Some really sensitive fans up there. Not saying you, but I've seen that sort of narrative going through.
Let's make a comparison, right? If you compare Chimaev's this is his fourth fight in the UFC, right? First 4 fights compared to Khabib's first 4 fights, Chimaev is like levels above in talent compared to Khabib. All around talent I'm talking about, not just in the wrestling department, but striking, submissions, everything. So if he's like that in 4 fights compared to Khabib, how far can this guy go? Like he could probably, a lot of people are talking about him being the champ in 2 divisions at one time. Like he's that talented. And I would like to see him try to go get that, man. Why not? Conor did it. So if you're going to root for Conor to do it, why wouldn't you root for Chimaev?
Seems like all these old guys are receiving their careers off Munhoz. They put Cruz in line to be the next one. Well, I mean, you got to fight. If you want to fight, you got to fight guys like Munhoz. No surprise there. Interesting that O'Malley is on the pay-per-view over Cruz and Munhoz. Not surprising. Sean O'Malley is more popular than both of them. You guys got to remember that O'Malley hits an audience that no other UFC fighter hits, and that's the YouTubers, right? Yeah. That's why Sean O'Malley is going on No Jumper. That's why he's on, he's become this sort of kind of tweener, teenage kind of audience for UFC fans that a lot of fighters can't tap into because they're older and they don't really get it the way he does. And he's a great businessman. Say what you want about Sean O'Malley, he is a fantastic businessman, and a lot of fighters can learn how to expand their brand.
He's the unofficial member of the Island Boys, right?
Pretty much, yeah, exactly.
Pretty much, right?
Thoughts on Dawkins versus Dolidze? Makes total sense. Eric Anders gets COVID. Kevin Holland's injured. Makes a lot of sense here. I'll have to look as far as a pick there, but yeah, it's just I like when they do this. It's like, okay, 2 guys are injured. Let's put their opponents together. It makes a lot of sense to me. What are we breaking down? We just broke down Cruz and Munhoz. As soon as we're done this, you can go back and rewatch that as well. Will you guys be putting any money on the only Greek fighter in the UFC, Michaelanis? I'm just staying away from that fight. Guy making his UFC debut in Pereira, which, I get it. He's a lot of hype. They're going to bring up the fact that he knocked out Israel Adesanya in kickboxing, which is, different. But yeah, I stay away from it. Michaelanis has been pretty underwhelming in the UFC. His only UFC win is over a guy in KB Buller who's not in the UFC anymore. And then his loss was to Modestus, which was a weird fight because you remember the cage got open and he fell through and all that. So I don't know. That screams past me. I picked Pereira just because of the kickboxing. I think he'll keep it standing.
And he trains with Glover. Like he's like part of Glover's camp, his team. Yeah. So, he has great coaching because I feel like Glover is a great coach too, on top of being the UFC light heavyweight champion. You know what I mean? So, but with this guy, how do you say his name?
Alex Pereira or Andre Michaelinas I think.
Oh, Michaelinas. Yeah. Michaelinas.
I think I probably said that
I think it's do or die for Michaelinas right now, isn't it?
Oh, of course.
Like this fight is like, if he loses, he's going to get cut. Yeah. But Pereira, I'm very interested to see how he's going to do against I don't know if this fight is the fight to kind of see how good he is. Yeah, I don't think this is the fight. I feel like his next fight after he gets this win, I feel like this is a setup for him. You know what I mean? Like, here, beat this guy, and then we're going to give you a good guy, a guy with a big name in the division. So keep your eyes on Pereira, man. The dude is an animal.
I don't know where I'm going to show, we got to do our underdog picks. I'm going to just go to best fight odds here just because then it's easier. If there is a page on the All-Star, I will look for it, or I just tried to look for it, but I couldn't find it. But let's get to our underdog picks as we're going to wrap things up here. We always wrap up a little bit earlier here on the program. Let's get to it. Okay, so UFC 268 underdog pick. I'm going to start. One that I looked at and I think could potentially pull off an upset here is Bruno Souza. He is fighting Melsick. Melsick's looked outstanding. My one concern with Melsick is the level of opposition you look at prior to coming in the UFC. It's been pretty bad. And yes, he got a great win over Colin Anglin in his debut, but Bruno Souza has fought in LFA. He's fought some decent guys. He's taken this on short notice. He's a big underdog here. I think there's some value here on Souza at plus 225. I know some people disagree with me here, but he was one that stood out to me. If you look at sort of their last couple fights, I think that Souza has the opportunity to pull off an upset over Melsick. Remember, Melsick was always on this card against TJ Laramie. He gets his opponent switch up. Usually if a guy's taking this on short notice and he's, making his debut, he's got a lot of upside because he doesn't really have anything to lose. He's doing the UFC a favor here, whereas Melsick, he just had the unfortunate thing of having his opponent switched up. So we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but Melsick's kind of giving me those Edmond Shahbazian vibes in terms of level of opposition coming into the UFC. So I'm going to take Souza for the upset at plus 225. Who are you liking?
I'm liking Chris Barnett, man. I don't know why he's the underdog, but he is the underdog at plus 100. I think he's just too dynamic of a striker, and he has like deceptive power. He just, he doesn't have the body like people would expect from a fighter, but the dude has an extensive taekwondo background. He has crazy kicks, crazy like agility for a big man. And I think John Vellante, he's just too stationary, and I think he's going to pick him apart and knock him out.
I actually picked Barnett as well. I didn't realize he was the underdog here. That was another pick. And I'll give you one more underdog I like is I like Frankie Edgar over Chito Vera. I think this is an opportunity for Edgar to go out there, redeem himself from that loss to Corey Sandhagen. The thing I look at is that Edgar got finished by Sandhagen, but Sandhagen's a finisher. Chito Vera does finish fights. I don't think he possesses the same power that some of the other guys that Edgar's fought. I don't see him getting a quick finish. And if he doesn't and it goes the distance, I think Edgar can win with his wrestling. I think that's something to consider. It's in New York as well. I'm sure that's going to boost up Edgar a little bit here. I think Chito Vera has an issue when he gets that step up. We talked about that with Pedro Munhoz. Chito Vera is the same way here. Great that he got the win over Davey Grant, but Edgar, I think, has still got some stuff left in the tank here. I know at 40, typically you see a decline there, but I think at plus 140, there's a lot of value there in Frankie Edgar, and I'm going to take him to get a decision over Chito Vera. So that'll be another underdog pick. And she might end up being an underdog come fight time, but I like Rose Namajunas over Weili Zhang as well. So it's dead even, minus 110. I think Rose is the better fighter, and I think she proves that on Saturday. So those are a couple underdog picks there. Any final comments there?
I agree with you with Frankie Edgar, man. I think a lot of people are underestimating him going into this fight. I feel like he has more tools. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's basically simple as that. He has more tools. He's faced he's a former champ, big fights, and him being in this position, I don't think it's nothing new for him. Vera, like you said, he just can't get over that hump, man. There's a lot of guys in this bantamweight division that just can't get over the hump, and that's him. And I think Frankie Edgar gets a big win here. I feel like he could get a dominant decision in this fight.
Okay, we'll answer a few more questions, then we will wrap things up here a little bit early like we usually do. There's one question I want to get to because it's a bit of a disagreement on my end here, but we've got, so Gregor Gillespie would beat Islam Makhachev. No, he wouldn't. I don't think so. No. There's more evidence of Islam looking really good as opposed to what Gillespie's done. I like Gillespie, but I think Islam beats him there. Kevin says we'll be live at the Munhoz Cruz fight. If there's a fight god, please let Cruz stay healthy. Great show. I think he will be. Hopefully, fingers crossed. We'll see. For you, Kevin, here's the comment I wanted to get to, and I love you supporting the show here, Euro, and I like getting disagreements here. But what's next for Dan Hooker? I actually believe he could do something, but it seems like he just sold out for the money they paid him. No, he didn't. He was in a bad situation. Like he couldn't get home because of the pandemic stuff. If he didn't take the fight, fans would say he's scared to fight Islam. So he took the fight. He took a risk. It didn't work out. Yeah, he got submitted, but a lot of guys are getting submitted by Islam. Islam's, we might be talking about a future title challenger here. And the fact that he lost to him doesn't look bad on Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker, look, he had a short camp for this. He went in there and did what a lot of fighters wouldn't do, and that's fight Islam Makhachev. So you can't call him a sellout. I've also heard people compare him to Cowboy Cerrone that, Hooker just wants to fight for the paycheck. That's not it. You got to look at the circumstances. He could not go home. He was stuck in Vegas. So it's either, go home and people say he's scared to fight Islam, or he takes the fight, and now we have people saying he's sold out. So I don't know. Got to give a little bit more respect to Dan Hooker because a lot of fighters did not want to take that fight.
Of course, nobody wanted to take that fight. And they had to offer something to Dan where he did take the fight because he was about to head back home and do the quarantine and be with his family, right? But at the same time, he wanted to get another fight in this year. And what else? You know what I mean? Like, you're going to go take that chance. Because why? If you beat Islam, now you're in title contention. Why would you not take that risk, right? And with this lightweight division, it's funny that you could lose one fight and then win the next one and be in title contention. Like, especially like a guy like Dan Hooker or a Chandler or a Poirier or a Makhachev or whatever. So I don't know what's next for Dan Hooker. I think Dan Hooker fight somebody down in the rankings. You know what? I want to see him fight Ferguson, man. Like, I think that would be a good fight for him and for Ferguson. Gauge where they're at, and let's see what happens. Ferguson going after the Nate fight, they're not going to give Nate Diaz Ferguson. Nate Diaz is going to get a wrestler like Chimaev, and they're going to run him away from the UFC. Like you mentioned it, James, a long time ago. Nate Diaz is trying to get that boxing money, and he's going to do it any way possible.
And that's looking more and more true. So I want to, we got to go back and find that clip of where I said that, because I feel like that's the case. Thoughts on, I don't know who that is, signing with Fernand Lopez. Do you know who that is?
No, I don't
either. We'll move there. Hamster versus Chiesa. Chiesa's fighting Sean Brady in
casuals.
A few weeks.
There's someone's going to say we're casuals because we don't.
No, we're not. I don't know who that is. Sorry. I'm trying to watch as much as I can. Do you think Hamzat got the bonus over Islam because he talked with Dana White holding Lee up? I don't know. I'm not sure why.
I don't think so.
I don't think that's the case. Great job as always, guys. Great card this weekend. A lot of great fights coming up. Keep up the great works. Matthew, can't thank you enough, man. This guy's always so positive. I love it. That's why we do this show as well. Wonder versus Magny is a possibility. We talked about that. Give me Billy Q for my underdog. How do you think he wins? I don't think he knocks out Burgos. Would probably be a decision. I like Barnett too. Barnett is a solid underdog. There we go. If Zhang wins, does the UFC do a trilogy against Rose? Is that the first trilogy for a female title fight or not? Trilogy title fight.
No, that is the first one. I think.
Yeah, that would be the first. And it could happen, but I hope not, because like Rose has had, I think, if you look at all of her fights, it was Joanna, then Andrade, then Weili Zhang. Like they keep doing this. Like give her some new opponents here. It's kind of getting annoying as well.
This is what I think is going to happen. If Rose wins, Rose wins, right? She's going to go on and fight somebody else. If Zhang Weili wins, I don't think Rose gets a rematch. I just don't believe that they want to go in that direction.
They won't. No,
they want.
Agree with them.
They want. I think as a promotion, you want Zhang Weili to be the champion,
of course,
just so they could go to China. Yeah. Once it opens up, once stuff starts flowing, you need that big name. You need a big fight. You need something to go push into China again. And Zhang Weili would be that. She's the closest, right? Who else? I will
also say this: if Zhang Weili loses, I think there's a possibility she goes to 125. Because what's she going to do if Rose is champ? Then and then they'll try and set up the Valentina fight. That's what I think.
If she wins, how much does Henry Cejudo and his coach Captain America take credit for the victory? That's the
probably
question.
A lot. I mean, that's sort of their thing, right? So we'll see. Okay, good time to wrap up the show here. Thanks again for watching. We do this every week, so if you missed this or you missed a question, just post it in the comments or hit us up on Twitter. I'm at Lynch on Sports. He's at JHK MMA. JHK, what do you got coming up this week as far as stuff going on in your world?
Well, I got a bunch of interviews that I did for 268, so go check them out on the All-Star. This channel, actually, they're all there. And just keep following the All-Star and just keep following this podcast. And keep supporting. And thank you everybody for listening. And we love everybody that's watching.
We do. Even the trolls, at least you're watching. I'll be back Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, 8 a.m. Pacific time on my other YouTube channel at Lynch MMA. You can I do a Q&A there every Thursday. And then I'll also be doing my Hangout stream for UFC 268 on that channel as well. I'm moving it over there. A variety of reasons. I'll explain why later. But so I'll be doing that for the next little bit. So Thursday, Q&A. Saturday, I've got the UFC 268 Hangout stream. And I got a bunch of interviews coming out this week. Like I am booked solid today, tomorrow, Thursday. A couple notable names in there. One of them I mentioned already here, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. So make sure you tune in for that. Before we get out of here, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and also make sure you download the Fantasy Fanatics MMA app where you can talk smack if you pick better than I do or John does. But there you go. Have a great weekend. If we don't talk to you, I will see you next week previewing another upcoming notable fight, and have a good one.